another My Hero Academia anime versus manga video breaking down season 7 episode 13 titled A Chain of Events Across the Ages, sharing the same title as chapter 369, referencing Deku finally confronting All For One to bring an end to the ongoing war between One For All and All For One that has lasted for generations. Now the episode begins with a flashback of Deku over the ocean seeing the X66s in the distance. Ethan tells Deku that they were supposed to be guarding the skies around UA, and he continues to tell Deku the reason why they stayed in Japan instead of returning home, and that was because Star and Stripes wagered it all on the heroes of Japan to win, and because Deku inherited All Might's power. He then encourages Deku to use him and the rest of Stars' brothers in the X66s to be used as stepping stones to reach history's nastiest villain, Shigaraki and All For One. Deku proceeds to swing off of the X66s that lead him straight to Shigaraki at UA, which references the crane scene from the Amazing Spider-Man film, where the crane operators come together using their cranes to form a direct path to Oscorp in order for Spider-Man to stop the lizard. In the present, Deku hits Shigaraki with a smash after arriving to the coffin in the sky. Mirio is relieved to see Deku, while All For One wonders if Deku has gotten stronger. All For One, being in control, notices the red glowing energy around Deku's legs and remembers seeing that same energy back when he killed the third user of One For All way back then. The smash from Deku causes Shigaraki to bounce off the ground, and here the anime adds in a scene of Aizawa reminding Mandalay to relay to the other heroes to reactivate the electric barrier, which is actually a really good addition, showing the importance of keeping Shigaraki in, whereas in the manga it just kind of turns on after Deku is inside. Also, Mandalay is completely removed from the scene, showing the UA system. Deku apologizes for being late, and in the middle of asking if everyone was alright, he turns to see Bakugo's lifeless body on the ground. For some change in detail, Best Jeanist gets added into the scene when Deku first sees Bakugo. Bakugo's body in the manga actually faces towards Deku, and the anime doesn't show Deku noticing Bakugo's All Might trading card on the ground when showing him first noticing Bakugo is dead. Continuing on, Deku sees that because he took so long to arrive, everyone had to suffer greatly. All For One mocks Deku, seeing if he has an excuse for being so late. He wants Deku to make the excuse of there was nothing that he could do, and he tells Deku to make the excuse so he could avoid taking responsibility like the rest of them. Deku, listening to All For One and thinking about Bakugo, begins to rage once again, going into his rage form last seen during the Paranormal Liberation War arc. All For One knows that in this rage state, Deku's moves become easy to predict, and plans on countering his first attack and breaking Deku's spine. All For One further eggs Deku on by asking him to admit that he loves the present he got for him. Mirio tells Deku it's going to be okay, that he understands Deku feels like he'll never forgive himself for what happened to everyone. But that's exactly what All For One wants him to feel. He states that Tamaki and the others are still breathing, as the anime adds in shots of Nejiri, Tamaki, Best Jeanist, and Mirko all breathing. Mirio says that Edshot is trying to save Bakugo's life. The anime adds in Edshot giving Bakugo CPR. He says Edshot is going to pull it off, meaning that they haven't lost anyone yet, and that no one has given up. All For One, hearing Mirio, says that he's avoiding the facts and reality of the situation they're in. And Mirio says they're heroes, and if heroes don't say stuff like that, then who will make ideals into reality? Deku remembers All Might saying heroes risk their lives and put their money where their mouth is. He remembers Ethan telling him how Stars bet it all on the heroes of Japan. He remembers the fifth user of One For All and how it was okay to get angry, but what really matters is controlling his heart. Deku, no longer in his rage state, apologizes to Lemillion. Focusing all of his attention to All For One, in control of himself and surrounded by the users of One For All, he asks All For One if Shigaraki is still in the body. All For One tells Deku that Shigaraki isn't here anymore, and that the two have perfectly melded into one another. But but it's possible that since All For One was alive longer than Shigaraki, that he's the one calling the shots. Tenko from within attempts to come out of the meld, with All For One suppressing him, showing that All For One and Shigaraki aren't entirely 100% complete. All For One tells Deku that he doesn't know what he's up to, but he won't get a happy ending. Mirio tells Deku that earlier Shigaraki started freaking out like a child, almost like he got possessed, meaning that they haven't completely melded, and the harder they fought back, the more unstable Shigaraki got. Nana Shimura's vestige, looking at Shigaraki's singularity form, sees her son Kotaro and tells Deku that Shigaraki is still in the body. The fight finally begins with All For One jumping off the ground into the air. The jump itself pushes the entire arena in the sky down towards the earth. All For One, tired of talking, states he's going to take his little brother back, slamming down on Deku as the two clash. Deku, face to face with All For One, tells him that he won't let him have his ideal ending either. Then, fusing both Fa Jin and Black Whip quirks together, creating Black Chain to enhance Black Whip's binding control, wraps Black Chain around Shigaraki's arm, swinging him into a load of debris. Upon landing, All For One begins to tell Deku that the same trick won't work twice, but before he finishes his sentence, Deku releases Black Chain, surprising him as Deku is gearing up for a powerful attack. The second user of One For All tells Deku that once he uses his quirk, he's done, so he needs to take down All For One and Shigaraki within 5 minutes, or else the world loses this war. Deku, ready to settle this once and for all, uses the second's transmission and begins moving his hands similar to how someone would shift gears when driving a car, and in an instant appears in front of All For One, punching him in the gut 3 times. With each punch, Deku switches gears from second gear to third gear and finally top gear. These punches explosively sends All For One into the sky. As Mirio sees this unfold, he notices that the sounds coming from Deku's punches are delayed, meaning that Deku's speed has far surpassed that of the speed of sound. All For One, in shock, wonders what Deku even did to him and doesn't even know where Deku is at right now, as he is too fast for him to keep up with, and comes to the conclusion that Deku has a meta ability that changes the speed of those he touches. Deku once again shifts gears, going into gear shift overdrive, instantly appearing behind All For One. The second user states that his quirk now is different from when he used it back then, and that Izuku right now is at 120% out of 100% in terms of power. In the anime, we see that because Deku is so powerful at 120%, the world around them seemingly stops moving as he delivers a powerful Detroit smash onto Shigaraki's body. As this happens, Yoichi tells All For One's vestige that today will be the day they end their war. All For One's vestige thinks back to when he ended the life of the second user of One For All, finding it strange that his quirk grew to be so powerful within One For All, as his meta ability should only change the speed of what he touched, only working on small objects. All For One thinks of the second and how he posed no threat to him, as he was insignificant, and that's all he was meant to be. In the flashback, All For One, crying, holds the second by his neck, having already defeated him, standing over the bodies of those in the second's resistance against All For One. In a last-ditch effort, the second has a hidden blade shoot towards All For One from behind, but All For One, without taking his eyes off of the second, easily crushes the blade with his quirk. They both stare into each other's eyes, and the second, looking down at All For One, smiles. Here, the anime actually doesn't adapt the panel of All For One seeing the embers of One For All inside of the second, meaning that the reason the second smiles is because One For All is now with the third, somewhere away from All For One, which is why All For One's eyes begins to widen. All For One in the present wonders how he is able to see the vestiges of One For All. Time seemingly begins to move again as All For One slams into the ground after being hit by Deku's overdrive Detroit smash. Here, the anime adds in Mirio shielding Mirko from the shockwave, and we see the reactions of those underneath Yue and Aizawa looking at Deku. The second then explains his quirk Gear Shift. It turns out that just like the other meta abilities of the other One For All users, his quirk became stronger the more One For All grew in power. Gear Shift originally only worked on small objects, but its scope broadened, allowing it to work on more diverse targets and functions right down to the cellular level. The second says that a fist imbued with this quirk and the might built up within One For All can warp the laws of reality. In an extremely epic moment, Yusei Run returns and plays as Deku heads straight down to All For One, hitting him with a quintuple Detroit smash. All For One notices that this smash wasn't as strong as before because it wasn't imbued with the quirk Fajin, giving it that extra boost in built up power. With Deku being too fast for him, he tries to predict the timing of Deku's next attack and swings to counter Deku's incoming attack, but All For One misses completely as Deku switched to low gear, completely stopping him in place. The second says that Gear Shift adjusts speed without abiding by the laws of inertia. The law of inertia, also known as Newton's first law of motion, states that an object will remain at rest or in motion unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. The second says that All For One should have known this, and Deku shifts gears as All For One spins in the air to attack again. Deku then uses the Six's smoke screen, blocking his vision, and from above yanks All For One into the air, catching All For One off guard. Deku, analyzing All For One, states that if All For One had been watching the timing of his movements, he will use Danger Sense to detect All For One's counters and then smoke screen to obscure his vision, following this by using Nana's float, providing him some instant height, and catch All For One with Black Whip when he's not watching. Finally, thanks to the quintuple Detroit smash, Fajin was refilled, so he'll go into Gear Shift Overdrive again. As Deku says this, the anime adds in the One For All users when their respective quirk gets mentioned. The second tells All For One that meta abilities isn't what he should have been paying attention to, rather he should fear the reason why someone chooses to use their gifts, as true power resides within an individual's intent, and that's why people call them quirks. Deku, in his overdrive state and his fist boosted by Fajin, tells All For One that he won't let him hurt anyone else. Deku and All For One clash in mid-air in an anime-only scene, extending the fight as we see the other heroes all looking at Deku and All For One clash in the distance. Deku and All For One struggle, but Deku completely obliterates All For One's arm and Shigaraki's armored singularity form, directly landing a powerful smash to the center of his body. Yoichi tells Deku that One For All and All For One are resonating with each other, as Yoichi can see All For One within Shigaraki's body and can see that this battle and the chain of events leading to this exact moment has shaken the balance of All For One and Shigaraki's melding. The second says to not forget what Shimura said about having the resolve to stop Shigaraki even if he has to kill him, and that Deku can't be defeated just yet. All For One thinks about how they went on about giving everything they have, but he himself hasn't used a single quirk yet and hasn't displayed the true value of Shigaraki's body. He begins to blame Eraserhead, the coffin in the sky, the hero's divide and conquer plan, all of the sequence of events that led to this very moment. Shigaraki's body once again begins to adapt to everything going on as he says, "Not yet." Both Aizawa and Deku look on as Shigaraki takes a new form, as the anime adds in shots of all of the different locations in the war. All For One agrees with Yoichi that the series of events that led to this will inevitably decide the victory or defeat for all involved. The episode ends with All For One saying, "Then I still have a chance at winning," as we switch over to Spinner at the hospital. Now this episode covers a total of 3 chapters, them being chapters 367, 368, and 369. Now this episode was absolutely hype from beginning to end. Bones actually cooked when it came to the animation of Gear Shift and just Deku versus All For One in general. And of course, it's always a 10 out of 10 when you say run makes a return in the series. It will never get old, and I can't wait to see the next episode. Let me know your thoughts on the episode. Did they cook with the changes? Let me know everything in the comment section below. With that said, if you enjoyed the video, then be sure to quintuple Detroit, smash that like button down below, and if you are new to the Kidoroki channel, then be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications on so that you don't miss any My Hero Academia Season 7 breakdowns. With that said, I'll see you all in the next one.